All right, so today we're going to be doing operations with complex numbers. And let's talk about what a complex number is. A complex number is written in this format, a plus bi, where a is the real part and bi is the imaginary part. And here are some examples. 7 plus 6i, that's a complex number. It has both a real part and an imaginary part. 6 minus 6i, it can be anything. Give me an example, guys. 10 plus 11i, perfect, okay? So that is what a complex number looks like. And we're gonna be doing operations. Operations means adding these, subtracting these, multiplying and dividing these, okay? So let's look at an example. Here we are adding two complex numbers, okay? So I'm going to combine my real part and then combine my imaginary part. So let me highlight what we're combining. Here is the real part, and here is the real part. We're going to combine those together. And then we will combine the imaginary parts, the positive 3i with the positive 2i. So guys, I will do negative 11 plus 9 is negative 2. 3i plus 2i is 5i. So that is my answer. Okay, now I'm going to do number 4 with you, and I think if I do number 4, you guys can do number 3. Whenever there is a negative or a minus sign outside of the parentheses, you need to distribute this, okay? So over here, you would also distribute this negative. When you distribute the negative, all the signs will change. Okay, so let's write this out. I have 6i. I'm going to distribute this minus sign, so this will become a negative 14 or minus 14, and this will become a positive I. And then plus 5 minus 3i. Now again, I'm going to combine my real parts, so the negative 14 with the 5 will be together. So negative 14 plus 5 is negative 9. And then I'm going to combine the imaginary parts. So the 6i plus I is 7i, minus 3 would become 4i. So this is 6 plus 1 is 7, minus 3 is 4. So this will be plus 4i. Okay, I'm going to let you guys do number 3. So this is an addition and subtraction examples. I'm going to move on to multiplying. Do you guys need some clarity on this slide? Okay. All right, so multiplying. Now, I need us to remember that I squared, do you guys remember what I squared is? Look back at your notes. What is I squared? Not 1, negative 1. So guys, write that in the box. I squared equals negative 1. All right, so guys, I'll do number 6 with you. What's negative I times negative 2? Well, 2 negatives make a positive, so this will just be 2i. Negative I times 10i will be negative 10i squared, because there's 2 i's being multiplied. Okay, so let's simplify this. I have 2i minus 10 times, what did we just write over here? I squared is just negative 1, so I'm going to put negative 1 there. So I get 2i plus 10. And you can just keep it like that. The correct format would be to put the real number in front and the imaginary part last. But your answer is still correct if you left it like that. So that would be your answer, 10 plus 2i. So if you remember from our notes, we always put the real part first and the imaginary part second. Okay, this is the format. All right, I'll do another example with you. I'm going to do one with foiling. So how about I do number 7? 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times negative I is negative 7I. Then we'll do the next part. I times 4 is 4I. I times negative I is negative I squared. Okay, now remember, I squared is just negative 1. Everything else can come down. Well, what's negative 7I plus 4I? Yep, negative 3I. So I combine the middle to become negative 3I, and I squared is negative 1. Okay, what's two negatives right next to each other? Yep, so this will be 28 minus 3I plus 1. And we're going to combine the real parts. So I will highlight this for you. So I have 28. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let me highlight this. So this is 28 and a 1. So together that would be 29. So my answer is 29 minus 3I. And I will let you guys do number 8. That is a multiplying example. Let's try division. Oh, never mind, we have some more. So I'll just help you start off. If I have a squared, what does that mean I do? I would write it twice. Good. This means 6 minus 2I times 6 minus 2I. And it would be just like the previous one. I see a lot of people do this. They'll just square the 6 and then square that to get 36 minus 4I squared or something like that. That's incorrect. You do not distribute the squared. You write it like this. Okay? All right, now I'm going to talk about complex conjugates. Okay, so a complex conjugate is when two complex numbers in the form of a plus bi, thank you, and a minus bi are being multiplied together. Well, we're doing the product here. So do you guys see why these are called complex conjugates? What do you think the definition of a complex conjugate is? It says a plus bi and a minus bi are complex conjugates. It's just switched. Same thing, but just switched. A plus 1 and a minus 1. So you guys see how I have a 3 minus I and then a 3 plus I. Those are called complex conjugates. Okay? Here I have negative 7 plus 2I and negative 7 minus 2I. Those are complex conjugates, where they add and subtract the imaginary part. 5 minus 4I, 4 plus 4I. Those are called complex conjugates. Okay, and so now they're just multiplying it. Now here's the hint. The product of two complex conjugates is always a real number. So let's test out that theory. Which one would you like me to do? 11, 12, 13, or 14? 14? Okay, so negative 7 times negative 7 is 49. Negative 7 times negative 2I is a positive 14I. Next, 2I times negative 7 is negative 14I. And then 2 times negative 2 is a negative 4, and I times I is I squared. Okay, now look, 14I minus 14I, that cancels out, it's just 0. So I have 49 minus 4I squared. And guys, what did we say I squared was? I squared is negative 1. So I can erase this I squared, and I'm going to put a negative 1 in its place. Okay, so let's see what we have. 49, and what's negative 4 times negative 1? Positive 4. So my answer is 53. And I got a real number. No imaginary part. Okay? So I will let you guys do the complex conjugate section. Okay, now we're gonna use the square root method. Okay, so I have a squared here. We're gonna use the square root method. So guys, I'm gonna take the square root. Actually, I'm gonna do the hardest one. I'll do number 18. Is my parentheses alone? Is it isolated? No, I need to get rid of the 2. So I'm gonna divide both sides by 2 first. And I'll get x minus 1 squared equals, what's negative 56 divided by 2? Negative 28?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to do the square root of both sides. I can take the square root of this side and the square root of this side. The square root cancels out with the squared. So I am left with x minus 1 equals the square root of negative 28. Now, guys, something that we have to remember from the last lesson, the square root of negative 1 equals I, okay? So we're going to rewrite this square root. Yes.
What if you what if you just...
Okay, so now I'm going to break apart this square root. So I'm going to do this up here where I have some space. Square root of negative 28. I can rewrite this as negative 1 times, what are 2 numbers that multiply to give me 28? 7 and 4, perfect. 4 and 7. So guys, let's break this up. Negative 1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 7 will give me the square root of negative 28. Is everyone okay so far? Okay. What's the square root of negative 1? I. Okay. What's the square root of 4? 2. And I'll just keep the square root of 7 because that won't break down. Okay, perfect. So let's write what I have. We can rewrite the square root of negative 28 as 2i square root of 7. Now, guys, remember, we're going to have both a positive version of this and a negative version of this. Okay? We're not done yet. Okay, so now I'm going to get the x by itself. I don't really need these parentheses. I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and that's my final answer. X equals plus or minus 2i square root of 7 plus 1. Okay. And let me see if I have some more. Oh, okay. So guys, when I have a fraction, how would I get rid of this negative 1/2? Multiply it by negative 2, perfect. So you multiply this side by negative 2, that cancels. Multiply this by negative 2. So you'll get x minus 7 squared equals negative 54. And then you guys would do the square root of both sides. Okay, so I'm going to stop it right here. Any questions before we end the notes? No? Okay, I'll be walking around if y'all need help.